What's up, bros and brothers? And today's video is gonna be a little bit unusual. I'm not gonna be breaking anything. I'm not gonna be showing you my personal collection, but instead I will talk about something which I find very, very dangerous. And that is promotion of trading cards as investments, which is happening all across the social media right now. This all activity is very concerning because, yes, few people who are pumping up investment cards and are promoting all this action will make money through the various channels, but a much higher number of people who will buy into all these advertisements will actually lose all their hard-earned money. And before I start, note that I'm not against collecting. It's a great hobby. I have been in that hobby myself for 25 years, and I've been greatly enjoying it. But what I'm saying is that you shouldn't expect any price appreciation when you're buying cards. Or to be 100% honest, you should be ready to lose all the money you are putting into your cards. Well, the most obvious first question all of you should have is who am I to talk about this topic? How am I different from all these people who are promoting trading cards as an investment opportunity? Well, there are at least three things which set me apart. First, I've been collecting since 1995, and I have never left the hobby. Every year since 1995, I've been adding some cards to my collection. I've been observing all the trends and so on and so forth. I'm not pretending to be the most experienced collector here, because those of you who follow my channel know that I haven't been collecting during the times when teams like Minnesota Lakers and Buffalo Braves were playing, but at the same time, if you compare me to an average guy who is promoting cards as an investment, it's usually somebody who had been collecting for a couple of years in 80s and 90s and then came back to the hobby in 2018. So I have a little bit more of the perspective of different cycles of the hobby here. The second thing which puts me a little bit apart is my background in the investment analysis. By my trade, I'm a finance professor at Fordham University, and I have a PhD in finance from Columbia Business School. So for almost 10 years, for almost 10 years, I really feel like an old fart. I have been teaching modern techniques of investment analysis to MBA, executive MBA, PhDs, and so on at Columbia and Fordham. And upon their graduations, some of my students have invited me to consult for some of the largest banks and money managers in the US, the UK, Germany, Canada, and so on and so forth. Again, it is very painfully obvious that I'm not playing NHL hockey with Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, Carl Icahn, and so on. But when you put me on this East Coast Hockey League rinks where players like Flipology.io, that's a real name of one of these groups which promote cards as an investment. I don't know how do they come up with these names, but if you put me to play with Flipology.io and players of the similar caliber, I'm pretty sure that I will stand out. The last, but definitely not the least difference between me and the people who are promoting the cards as investments is that I don't have any conflict of interest. So what these people are trying to do is they're trying to make you pay for various subscriptions. They're trying to make you buy the cards which they are selling. They are trying to make you buy the cards through their eBay affiliate programs, and so on and so forth. So you see, the common feature across all this is that these people will make money regardless of their advice. Instead, I won't make any money from this video. So my only goal is to provide you an honest advice. Okay, after this very long introduction, let's finally get to the business. As an investment asset, trading cards are risky. I know I sound a little bit like Captain Obvious, but what it means is that you are not sure what the value of the trading cards is going to be in the future. From the financial analysis point of view, the key principle when investing into risky assets is that all we know is that over long horizon, the economy will grow as a whole. We don't know what will happen over short horizon at all. We also don't know which particular sectors of the economy, which firms or industries will grow over the long term. On rare occasions, it's actually possible to predict which parts of the economy will decline. But I'm not going to talk about this too much because even in financial markets, taking advantage of such information is rather costly, and in trading cards it's essentially impossible. The practical implication of this key investment principle into risky assets is that the only strategy which will generate you wealth long term is simply buying and holding a well-diversified portfolio of assets which represent the economy as a whole. In its simplest form, this is something like S&P 500 portfolio. In this video, I'm going to talk about how this key investment principle applies to the player investing strategy, because this is by far the most common strategy people who are promoting cards as investments are pumping. I will also make the second video where I will talk about how this key investment principle applies to other popular investment strategies such as wax investing, cassette investing, vintage investing, and so on and so forth. Today I'm going to talk mainly about basketball cards because these are cards which are pumped up the most right now, but everything I talk is directly applicable to other sports as well. So, player investing. Player investing is simply investing into players which haven't fully established their legacy yet. The main problem with player investing and the direct application of our investment principle in the risk assets here is that it's impossible to know which players will appreciate in value. So, for instance, right now in basketball we have Zion, Ja, Luka. Everybody is saying that they're going to be next LeBrons and so on and so forth. But for a moment, it's useful to stop and look back into history and check what actually happened to those previous next LeBrons. Well, almost every year there are a couple of lottery picks in the draft which are hyped really strongly, but in some years the hype is particularly strong. For example, the previous player before Zion who was hyped really hard was Ben Simmons. So there was a huge competition between Upper Deck and Panini to sign him to the exclusive contract and so on and so forth. And at the top of this hype, PCA 10 Prism Silvers of Ben Simmons were going like for 2,500. You couldn't get a visibly off-center PCA 10 Silver Prism of Ben Simmons below 2K. And what are the prices of this card now? I actually haven't checked, but I would bet something like 1K. Not even 1K, like probably even lower than that, like $800-900. And no, Ben Simmons didn't have a bad career. He is a clear-cut all-star playing in the big market. He's on the team which will contend for years. So maybe you think that this is just the beginning for Ben Simmons. So he will win MVP, and then his prices will skyrocket again. Nope. There are tons of MVPs like James Harden, Russell Westbrook, who are selling for a fraction of the prices which they used to sell at the top of their hype. Okay, maybe you think that Simmons' prices will skyrocket when he will win the championship. Again, I could give you a long list of examples which would prove that it's not the case, but just let me tell you a personal story here instead. So those of you who follow my channel regularly know that I have a very soft spot for portly players and also portly coaches like Stan Van Gundy, but late 90s and early 2000s, I was going crazy over Shaquille O'Neal. And this is the player who was dominating the league like left and right. And he is what, like I think he is something like a 4-time NBA champion and like 4-time Finals MVP. And what about his prices? Actually, back at that time, I was very poor and I couldn't afford pretty much any of his cards except base cards. But when I look at the prices now and compare to the prices which I was observing during late 90s and early 2000s, it's just crazy. Essentially, the cards which were worth $50 back then are worth $10 now. And you should understand that $1 now is like 60 cents back then. So this was like a super player, and still his prices all went downhill. Okay, so you might think, okay, maybe Ben Simmons is just a bad example, and other hyped players did much better. Well, let me tell you who was the most hyped rookie in NBA between Zion and LeBron. It was Andrew Wiggins. Yeah, the hype around Andrew Wiggins was just unsustainable. I remember in 2015 there was an All-Star game in New York, and Panini brought some players to sign for public, and the line to get a signature of Andrew Wiggins was like 6 blocks, and the police cut it because it was just too long and was blocking the traffic. Just for comparison, you could just walk in and get an out of something like DeMarcus Cousins without any line. The line for Steph Curry was like 2 blocks. And what are the prices of Andrew Wiggins cards right now? No, I'm not gonna talk about that because it's just way too painful. Next, so who was the second most hyped player between Zion and LeBron? That was Derrick Rose. And yeah, I didn't talk about what the prices of Andrew Wiggins were back then and what they are now because it's too painful. And for that same reason, I'm also not going to talk about what prices of Derrick Rose were back then and where they are now, because that's just comparable to hammering your testicles. And Yes, once in 20 years there will be like somebody like LeBron who will live up to the hype, but you won't make much money out of it because you will have to suffer 19 years of all these losses from Andrew Wiggins's, Ben Simmons's, Derrick Rose's, and even Shaquille O'Neal's. So why is it so difficult to pick up the next LeBron? Well, exactly because of our key investment principle into risky assets. We don't know which assets in the economy will grow long term, and we don't know at all what will happen short term. There is actually a very, very straightforward analogy to the stock market here. Because in the stock market, almost all gains are coming from only 4% of the stocks. So your chances to pick up individual stocks which will give you that gain are very low, like 4%. And the best practical illustration of this is a very famous Warren Buffett bet. In 2007, Warren Buffett actually challenged hedge funds to beat S&P 500. He essentially told, okay, now I will just buy S&P 500 portfolio and I won't sell it, I won't trade at all, I will just hold it for 10 years. And you hedge funds, you can do whatever you want. You can buy any assets, you can trade as often as you want, and if you will outperform S&P 500 portfolio, I will pay you. If you won't outperform, then you will pay the charity of my choice. And there was a very long list of hedge funds which signed up for that bet. Actually, most of them went bankrupt before the end of the bet, but those few who survived, their returns were like miserable. The S&P 500 return over that time interval has been something like 80%, and on average, those few hedge funds who actually survived to the end of the bet had a return of 20%. Shows that it's practically impossible to pick up the assets which will appreciate in value. And what I would like to point out is that the situation is almost exactly the same in the card market. So every draft, there are 2 or 3 players. So exactly the same 3 to 5% as in the stock market who will increase in price. And nobody is able to predict which players those will be. Like, for example, in Ben Simmons' year, the only player who substantially appreciated in price was, I think, Pascal Siakam, drafted, I think, either late first round or early second round, and nobody gave a flying F about him for years. There are also other players who appreciated a lot, like Giannis and Kawhi and Klay Thompson. Yeah, this one like lottery picks, and nobody cared for them for years as well. So nobody knows who will appreciate long term. Okay, now we see that it is impossible to pick up the players which will appreciate long term. But there is also another variation of this player investing strategy, which essentially goes like, okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna jump on the hype train, and then I'm gonna jump off just before the train will go full speed out of the cliff. And drawing the connections to the stock market, it's well documented that in stock market, this strategy, which is often called market timing, is not working at all. And the reason is, again, our key investment principles that we don't know at all what is going to happen short term. And the best practical illustration of it is, again, this Warren Buffett bet. So if those hedge funds were able to jump on and jump off the hype train. So in the stock market, why didn't they do that? They were allowed to trade as much as they wanted, and there was like tons of dips in the stock market during that time, such as Great Recession and so on and so forth. But somehow they didn't do that. Yeah, the best hedge fund, which was competing against Buffett, made something like 50% return, and S&P 500 made 80% return. But some people are arguing that in the current markets, this strategy actually could work because they are much less efficient than the stock market. But this is not the case at all. Well, yes, there are much more investors in the stock market compared to the current markets, but the size of the current market is also so small that you don't need many people to keep it efficient. Let's try to value the trading card market. What we know is that an average NBA team is worth $2 billion. So all NBA teams as a whole are worth $60 billion. And well, we have 4 major leagues, and so MLB is worth roughly the same as NBA. NHL is slightly cheaper. NFL is more expensive. So the joint value of all the teams is 4 times 60, $240 billion. So let's say $250 billion as a round number. Obviously, the value of the trading card market should be much smaller than that. So let's assume that the value of the trading card market is 10% of the value of all major league sport teams. It's a gross overestimate, but even with that estimate, we will see how things will turn out. 10% out of 250 billion is 25 billion. This is our value of the trading card market. There are also some people who are trying to estimate the value, this value based on eBay sales and so on and so forth, and they get the number which is much smaller than that. Let's think about some companies which are worth 25 billion. Well, it is the market value of some small U.S. retailer. I haven't checked. But I would bet like something like Best Buy has a market value of roughly 25 billion. And now the company like Best Buy, there are something like 5 to 10 analysts worldwide which follow Best Buy. So not even full-time, but something major banks, say like Citibank, will have somebody whose full-time job is to follow a mid-cap US retailer, and that guy or girl will spend a couple of hours a week following what's going on with Best Buy. And the information these 10 analysts generate is enough for the market for Best Buy is efficient. There's actually a very good book called Black Edge. You could find it on Amazon, about people who thought that the market for the smaller companies like Best Buy is not very efficient, and they will be able to make a lot of profits out of trading their stocks. But the outcome was that they lost a lot of money and had to go to the jail. These 10 analysts are enough to efficiently price Best Buy. Well, if we think about NBA, for sure there are more than 10 people who are closely following every player in NBA. And there are more than 10 card collectors which are closely following every player in the NBA, from the lottery picks to the Gatorade League scraps. And you also don't need that much money to move the prices of the cards. I I personally, although I'm not like the highest end collector, I have determined prices on a certain Prism card. It doesn't take a lot of money at all, given how few key cards each player has and how relatively cheap these cards are. So no, the card markets are pretty efficient for the market of their size. And there are some further complications which make taking advantage of this market timing in the card market even more difficult than in the stock market. For instance, the transaction costs are very high in the card market. So in the stock market, you bought, say, a Best Buy stock, it went up 1 cent, you sold it, you generated a profit. But in the card market, with all this sales tax, all this returns from buyers and so on and so forth, your actual eBay fees, your actual trading costs are like 20%. And furthermore, what you should understand that it's even if you sold something and made profit with all these trading fees, if during the next 60 days, if this price will go down, you will get an eBay return. So happened to me just recently. Sold some Luka cards. Luka got a little bit injured, got the cards back the same way. So. And the explanation is, it's always something scratches on the case and similar BS. Yes, you can argue that eBay is not only a place to sell and buy, but the prices outside of eBay just are just not comparable to what you would get on eBay. But this is not even the main point. The main point is that card markets are rather efficient for the market of its size. At the end of this video, I would like to address a couple of most common comments which arise in connection with the player investing. By far, the most common comment is that well, you did this all blah 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 for 30 minutes, but I've been investing into sport cards for 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 years and so on and so forth, and I made a lot of profits. Well, let's get back to our key investment principles. Nobody knows what is gonna happen short term. Also, in Warren Buffett bet, actually, some of these hedge funds, they were ahead of Warren Buffett, like after 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, they were beating S&P, but at the finish line, the result was very clear. It is the same as essentially playing against the casino. Yeah, you can win once, twice, 3 times, and so on and so forth, but in the long term, that's not going to be a winning proposition. The second common comment which I often hear is that, I understand that this investing into, I understand that investing into cards is gambling and so on and so forth, but I just do it to fund part of my own PC. And well, if your goal is to generate money to fund your PC, then you should use the traditional investment vehicles, such as, say, S&P 500 portfolio. It will help you to generate money long term, and will allow you to use this money to buy better cards for your collection. That's the only long-term winning strategy. That's pretty much it about player investing, and so the conclusion is exactly the same what we started with. The only rationale behind the player investing is gambling. And if you're gonna gamble, you should be 100% prepared to lose all your money. There will also be the second part of this video where I will cover other common investment strategies into the sport cards, such as wax investing, set investing, vintage investing, and will point their pitfalls in the same way I did for the player investing in this video.